Hey everybody, this is going to be a short video to help you with completing the EAL assignment number 2 that is due this Sunday. So I will show you at the end, I did make a couple of adjustments to the Google Doc that you're going to fill out, and the adjustments that I made are only going to help you. So I gave you some hints for what to answer in each of the boxes, and I'll show you that at the end. So again, we are going to have you cite in AMA format the article. We're reading that same article from last EAL assignment, so I did give you feedback, and we should get this one right this time. So here's the example we used last time. This right here is our journal publication title, our article title here, author, and then our volume, edition number, and publication date. Okay. So we see here, this is our AMA citation for the article. Remember, we include the author's last name and then initials with no punctuation between the last and first name, period at the end. We then write the title of the article itself. So the only the first letter of the first word is capitalized. In the next example, I'm going to show you an exception to that. After the article title is the journal publication title. In this case, it's Practical Assessment, Research, and Evaluation. This is italicized. And then we have our publication year. Immediately following a semicolon, we have the volume number. Immediately following in parentheses, we have the edition number. And then immediately following a colon, we have the page numbers with a period at the end. So I have another example for you. You read this nutritional genomics position paper earlier this semester. So just taking a look at it, we know that this is published in the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. There is some shorthand written, and I'll show you that on the next slide. So I want you to pause this, look at the information that's available to you, and I want you to write this in AMA citation style. So give this a pause, practice, and on the next slide I'm going to go over the answers. So like I said, this is the journal article title. Okay, this is published in the position paper section of the Academy's journal. We see down here, this is the shorthand for the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Oftentimes journals will have this written in the article somewhere. If you're ever unsure what the shorthand version is, include the long version. We see the publication year here. We see our volume and page numbers here. Typically in a journal article, the authors are going to be listed at the beginning, somewhere at the top of the article. But the interesting thing about these position papers from the Academy specifically is that it's from the position of the Academy as a whole, but someone does still write them. So instead of putting the author at the very beginning, they want to show that this is what the Academy stance is. So they won't include the author's name at the very beginning, but they will be included on the last page. So this screenshot right here is from the very last page of that journal article, and if you want to, this is still linked to Moodle, so if you want to open this and just see what I'm talking about, this section is at the very end of the article. It shows you your author. You see here that Catherine M. Camp is the author, and then the things that follow her here are her places of employment. So you see Kelly Government Solutions. They are a consultant to the Office of Dietary Supplements, National Institute of Health. And then you see that Elaine Trujillo is the second author. It shows where she works at the Division of Cancer Prevention, National Cancer Institute, National Institutes of Health. So all of that is to kind of disclose where these people work and maybe if any specific biases could be introduced. Then they have reviewers as well. This is going to be for any academy position paper or publication. There's always going to be groups or individual people that review those manuscripts. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click to the next slide. And this is showing us our AMA citation. So we have Camp, KM, comma, Trujillo E, period, position of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and I actually forgot to add nutritional genomics. I think that's the end of it. Okay, so I mentioned that there is a exception to that rule of the journal articles only the first letter of the first word being capitalized. So obviously the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is a proper noun. It's a group of people. So we're going to capitalize that organization's name. And let's see, did I add a space there? Can't tell. Okay, that space. So the position is, of course, the first word of the title. So position would always be capitalized, but we're going to go ahead and capitalize Academy Nutrition and Dietetics. Okay, so another exception is that if there is a colon, we can capitalize the first letter of the first word that follows that colon. So this isn't something that we looked at last time because I didn't want to overwhelm you, but in the future you can capitalize this first letter that follows that colon. Okay, and then we have Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. We saw that this was the shorthand version, and remember this is capitalized and italicized. That's immediately followed by a period, and then the publication year, then the volume after the semicolon, colon, page numbers. There's no addition number to this specific publication. So what you see here is that all of these are on the same indentation line. We don't indent the second and third lines. But also, we are just practicing AMA citations in general, so don't worry about like putting retrieved from or a web address that I linked to you. I want you to look at this specific journal article like you have found it in a physical journal. Okay, so the next thing that you guys are going to describe on the second assignment is the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So basically what these criteria are is the specific guidelines for entry into the study. So these inevitably should align with the research question that's being asked by the researchers. So if you ever look at that research question and either the people or the studies that they include don't align with that specific question, there's a problem. So for a review study, like we've read, this typically is going to address the outcomes that are measured by the previously published research, the study designs of that research, and the populations that they included in their previously published studies. So the whole purpose of a review study is to answer a question that several other studies have attempted to answer, but we haven't collected all of that data together to come to like a true consensus. So it doesn't make sense if they were asking a question about a specific population, but they included previously performed research with three other populations, right? So that doesn't help us to answer our specific question. Now for experimental or observational studies, these inclusion or exclusion criteria are going to look at typically like specific groups, maybe with a specific condition or of a certain age or socioeconomic status. So if you think about like experimental studies, whenever they're performing some type of intervention, think like a clinical trial for a medication or a treatment, they want to make sure that the people in that study have the same condition and maybe the same symptoms, or they're of the same age, or have something similar to themselves to be able to answer their research question. The opposite of inclusion would be exclusion criteria. So what are the researchers saying? If this person or if this study exhibits XYZ, we're going to exclude them. Okay. So if that specific criteria is held, that person or that previously published study can't be included in the new study. So this again could be children, like maybe they only want to look at adults specifically. It could be people with pre-existing conditions. An example would be if they're doing like a clinical trial on a specific medication to help with people with lung problems or lung cancer. Maybe they want to look at people who have the specific lung condition resulting from like a genetic issue or from asbestos exposure rather than from cigarette smoking, because maybe they think that people who were previously smokers, their lung condition was caused by something else, and maybe this won't be an effective treatment for them. So a good study will have this inclusion and exclusion criteria well defined, and all of this helps to reduce like bias and a poor interpretation of results at the end of the study. So this kind of comes into the study protocol. So this is the plan that the researchers are going to organize before the study even takes place. This is very important because this is going to reduce bias, reduce misinterpretation of results, and also keep the people safe who are participating in the study. It has to be well defined. So this is like a chef like creating a recipe for the meal he's going to prep for 100 people, instead of just, walking to the kitchen the day of and trying to whip together 100 meals, right? So it's really important. In primary research, this is going to answer the questions like, what was that selection and grouping process of the participants? What was the treatment and how was it organized? With secondary research, which would be primary research would be like a new experiment or a new study or new observational study, whereas secondary research is when we take previously performed studies, take their data, and try to do something new with it. So with secondary research, we would be asking questions like, how was this previously published study gathered, how was it organized, and how was it analyzed? So with the study that you guys read last week, they collected several studies. So how did they collect that information, make it organized so that they could come to a concise conclusion about different outcomes? So on your EAL assignment, you're going to answer these questions specifically. So how were participants recruited? In this case, it's going to be, how did they find these studies that were previously published? Was there any blinding? You may think that this is only for experimental studies, but typically the statistician will be blinded to whatever studies that they're analyzing. So blinding from the statistician to the experimenter can also be important. And then also, what was the intervention? So with an observational study or a secondary research study, there may not be an intervention that they're actually conducting, but you can talk about the interventions that were performed in the previously published research. Next, we have data collection summary. This sounds just like it says. What is the data that's being collected? How was it collected? And when was it collected? Also, we in this section are going to answer what is the independent, dependent, and the control variable. So you want to look at the research question, and especially with this review study that you guys are working on, you want to look at these researchers, the current study's research question, and what are the independent and dependent variables. Okay, so the research question was, how does self-weighing impact weight management, and how does self-weighing impact psychological outcomes. Okay, so we're not looking at the, in this case, not looking at the independent and dependent variable for all 17 studies. We just want to talk about what the independent, dependent, and control variables are for this specific study that they've done with all of that previously published research. Okay, then we are going to look at the participants and patients and sample section. So one thing that you guys are going to start answering is what was the attrition, and this means how many people started the study versus how many people finished the study. This can be important because that can highlight a high dropout rate, and if they analyze data certain ways, it could skew the results based on if they include everybody or if they don't include everybody's results in their analysis. We need to address the number of males versus females, their age, and also other demographics. So the authors of the current study discussed that there were some flaws in the demographics of this research outcome. So those are specific things we want to be sure to mention in this section. Okay, then we have our results and key findings. Basically what you're doing here is summarizing the results and the outcomes. So in the study that you guys are reading, there are sections for the specific outcomes that they're looking at. So if you wanted to outline it by outcome and then put some bullet points, the biggest thing that I want you to do is put these in your own words. So I don't want to see that you're rewriting what is in that article in your assignment, because that is plagiarism essentially. So discuss those important key findings, but also include any incidental findings. So a lot of times researchers will say these were the outcomes that were defined that we were looking for. These are the results related to those outcomes. But we also found this kind of by accident, and this is something that maybe we want to look into a little bit more in the future. So including those incidental findings can be really helpful for identifying future research needs. Okay, and then last, you are going to describe or you're going to give a critique of the results and conclusions. So these are some questions that you can consider. Does the author's conclusion or discussion match the results that were presented? Is the population at hand really able to answer that research question? Could any of these results have any bias or misinterpretation from the authors? And what could be done to make these results more reliable? How would you design the perfect study to answer this specific research question? So what you've done at the beginning of the assignment should help you to reveal some of the issues within that study that you can answer in these questions. So remember, the whole purpose of these assignments are to help you to critique research rather than just read them and understand kind of what's happening. Because when we form evidence-based practices, we want to make sure that we're looking at really good quality research. And eventually we'll collect a lot of really good quality research to form those practice applications. So you guys becoming more research literate is super, super important, and this is going to be something that helps you next semester, specifically in my class, because you're going to write a literature review on a research question that you guys come up with. So last thing I want to do is show you the changes that I made to the assignment, and the only changes I made was I added things like inclusion, exclusion, recruitment, blinding, intervention in these boxes just to help you out a little bit to know exactly what I am looking for in your answers. So this is linked to Moodle, and it is due on Sunday night, I believe. Let me double check before. Sorry guys, it's due Tuesday. Tuesday, September 29th at 11:59 p.m. So you have a little bit of time, but if you have any questions, shoot me an email. We can talk about it in class on Tuesday as well. But again, I think these are really good exercises for you to learn about how to not only read and interpret research, but also to tell if it's good research or not. So good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.